Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Monday, January 20th, 2025, and today we're going to talk country currency, as promised. Going to show conferences a little love and talk about, can biochar turn herbicides off? We'll ask the science, so let's do it. Happy Monday, everyone. I hope everyone had a nice weekend. For me, it was rainy here, or at least it was on like Saturday, but we watched some soccer. Gotta love a 6-point week for Brighton. I know you do. And played a lot of kitchen soccer, which, to be clear, is exactly what it sounds like. Soccer in the kitchen, but with a soft ball, but lots of it. We also watched the UK game over at our neighbor's house, who got our youngest of basketball. So that evening we played kitchen basketball as well. I mean, when the world outside is basically a cold mud pit on Saturday, then a tundra on Sunday from fresh snow and very, very cold weather, you just make it work, I guess. On Friday, after I got the show all wrapped up and posted, I sowed a handful of early spring crops in our tunnel, but not a ton of any one thing. About 40 square feet of each of radishes, arugula, baby spinach, and mixed lettuce. Just enough to kick the season off. I will do a little more of those crops again in about 2 weeks, but that's kind of a good start. Later this week, I will be stopping in at the Organic Association of Kentucky Conference. It's wildly close to where I live, which is convenient and appreciated. Daniel Mays of Frith Farm and our buddy Ian Zeglin, among many, many others, will be there. So I'm excited to see them and see lots of our other friends from near and far. Oak is a big social event for me, so I always look forward to it. But I also always come away from conferences like that with some great new insight that I can use on the farm. So hopefully I'll be able to share that with you. With that in mind, I know it's still relatively early, but if you all have any conference sessions you've seen this year that really blew your mind, or I guess that's a high bar, they can have just been really impressive or interesting. Anyway, please shout those out in the comments section. Maybe organizers looking for ideas for their conferences next year can get some ideas from you all. I usually try to attend at least one other random conference in the region every year just as an attendee. But with this show, I couldn't make it happen this year, this winter. I mean, I guess there's still time to do that, but with soccer coaching coming up, time is dwindling. Maybe next year we'll pop in somewhere random and hang out. That's always super fun for me, especially with the pressure of presenting off of the shoulders, and you can just enjoy the event. I've been to a ton of conferences over the years, and I learn something applicable in almost every session, and if not every session, then every conversation. I say this all the time, but a lot of the better growers are not doing YouTube videos and podcasts, but they may come in and do an hour-long presentation on their irrigation or tomato production or something that will absolutely change your life. For instance, I learned how to graft tomatoes, which you all know I love. I did that 2 or 3 years ago at the Oak conference, and it's like served me really well ever since. Or maybe those quiet farmers who have been farming forever and are really good at it just attend the event, and you end up sitting next to them at lunch and learning a bunch just in conversation with them there. Of course, conferences often have like a few flashy speakers to get attendees to come, but also conference goers. If you see a list of a bunch of names of speakers you've never heard of but have been farming for like 15, 20, or 30 years, that conference is probably going to slap. Also, and I think I speak for most growers when I say this, it's the hallway conversations that a lot of us go to the conferences for to begin with. Farming, especially individually, can get very lonely and you feel like you're on an island most of the time. So to be able to commiserate with a bunch of other growers who also feel that way can not only be reinvigorating, it can also be motivating to find ways off of that island, I guess. Find potential farm collaborators, friendships, meetup groups, etc. In fact, a lot of conferences are increasingly doing what they can to facilitate the farmer-to-farmer hallway conversations with more time between sessions and more social hours. So although they are often ostensibly billed as educational events, and certainly they are or can be that, conferences are how you get a bunch of farmers together to talk and get creative and get better and know that they're not alone. And to learn that, yeah, this job is hard and other people feel that way. Also, locally available grants and just general funding opportunities are often highlighted at these events. Conferences are often how groups like NRCS and SARE or whoever get the word out about what is available for grant funding, for funding or partial funding, cost shares, that sort of stuff. You may be able to find funding for all the cool ecological stuff you want to do, or tools you need, or high tunnels or whatever, by going to one of these conferences and learning what's available. So anyway, that's conferences in a nutshell. There's almost certainly still time to find a conference in your area to attend if you're interested. So just be on the lookout or Google Small Farm Conference and insert your state and see what pops up. Let us know what conferences are coming up that you're excited about or talks you've seen that blew your mind. Otherwise, we'll take a quick break and then talk some biochar, shall we? BRB. Today's episode of Growers Daily is brought to you by Harnwah Greenhouses. Harnwah Greenhouses has pioneered controlled environment agriculture since 1965, partnering with market gardeners and farmers across North America to deliver turnkey greenhouse solutions. Their unwavering mission is to support growers' success through innovation and expertise in design, manufacturing, and installation. Harnwah Greenhouses are engineered to withstand high wind and snow loads, providing optimal brightness, increased yields, rapid ROI, and long-lasting durability. With over 20,000 projects completed, they are more than a manufacturer. They are a trusted partner. Their structures foster sustainable, energy-efficient ecosystems that drive profitable, resilient agriculture. In 2025, Harnwah is introducing a new low-tech, high-tunnel model starting at just $2 per square foot, offering open field growers an accessible entry into controlled environment agriculture. Harnwah Greenhouses, leading the way in turnkey solutions for local growers. Learn more at harnwah.com. That's HARNOIS.com. All right, back to the show. If you, the listener, are enjoying this content, getting even a small amount of value from it, consider supporting our work over at patreon.com/notillgrowers. I will try to get to questions from everywhere that questions come in, but I will always get to your Patreon questions now. Today's Patreon question comes from one of our beloved Susans, who discusses a video they saw about biochar and heard the speaker at one point offhandedly mention that the biochar deactivated their herbicides. So that farmer ended up with a ton of weeds. Susan writes that she was like, wait, what now? Quote, I'm a huge proponent of biochar, have used a truckload of it so far, literally, and have had great results with it, but this benefit I had never heard. Is this common knowledge or even a fact? We don't know or follow anyone who uses quote unquote sides. Maybe I'm just out of the loop. Anyway, if this is a fact, it certainly has potential implications for further study on mending tainted soil and compost, end quote. Okay, so this weekend I decided to tackle this particular question as best I could and found myself in a bit of a rabbit hole looking into the chemical bioremediation potential of biochar with persistent herbicides like any normal person would on their days off. And my mind was kind of blown by some of the research around this. Just when I think biochar is potentially getting a little bit too overhyped, and certainly that happens, it goes and does something even more interesting. So I found this 2011 Australian study on a biochar made from wheat straw and applied to soil with varying rates of a couple different persistent herbicides. And they found that, quote, biochar amendment in soil resulted in greater persistence, i.e. less biodegradation of herbicides in soil. At the same time, there was greater biomass of ryegrass in soils amended with biochar compared to unamended soils, indicating reduced bioavailability in the presence of biochar in soils, end quote. So basically, the biochar kept the herbicide around longer, but also seemingly made the herbicide less effective. That study goes on to say that in biochar amended soils, normal applications of herbicides are likely going to be less effective. There's a whole bunch of evidence from as far back as the 70s on the effects charcoal has on locking up herbicides, let alone the more porous biochar, which has significantly greater surface area than charcoal. Now, does this result in people using even more herbicides than before on biochar treated fields? Or does it result in conventional growers choosing to ignore or not use biochar out of fear of it could make weed management more difficult? I'm going to doubt that it means they decide they don't need herbicide at all. That certainly doesn't seem like it would be the effect, but I don't know what the effect is. But it certainly sent me down a rabbit hole with biochar and bioremediation, where I discovered a review of 150 articles published between 1995 and 2021. This review covers a lot of stuff from antibiotics to dyes to all sorts of herbicides and pesticides, but found a significant amount of research that backs up this idea that biochar can reduce the efficacy of certain herbicides, though notably not all herbicides in all conditions with any old biochar. This review also suggested what that one study had, that biochar will retain the chemical in the soil longer, but reduce its effectiveness. So in effect, yes, it is possible that what the farmer was observing was accurate and potentially at least somewhat attributable to biochar. So to me, and obviously to Susan, the next obvious question is, could someone treat soil contaminated with persistent herbicides with biochar? So like if you have soil that's been contaminated with persistent herbicides, would biochar be a treatment for that? Well, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, and I'm hesitant to make recommendations based on a one single weekend review of scientific literature that honestly requires days per paper to really review adequately. My concern would be extending the life of the herbicide without reducing its efficacy enough. However, this little bit of research and a better understanding of like things like phosphorus buildup from deep compost mulch does have me increasingly leaning towards recommending a thin layer of biochar beneath compost mulches to help at least reduce that risk and the risk of nutrient overloads in the soil. If nothing else, well-made biochar has other known benefits, so it's not so much of a risk itself to just apply it anyway, unless of course you rely on herbicides and pesticides, then I guess that would be a risk. The other reason I don't feel confident recommending biochar as a solution is that I would just like to see more evidence of what those soils and their contamination levels look like down the line. I would like to know what the plant bioaccumulation of those chemicals looks like in biochar treated soils, how the soil performs, etc. But if you wanted to trial a bit in contaminated plots, there is at least some good evidence that you will see some results, or a return of weeds, which in this case may be a good thing. Also, as a side note, I'm heartened to see the positive research coming out about the potential for remediating PFAS, forever chemicals, with biochar, meaning perhaps that could be a means of managing heavy PFAS loads in soils and or waterways. Nature to the rescue as usual, I suppose, if you can consider specially made charcoal to be quite quote-unquote nature. So that will be something I will be keeping my eye on for sure. Anyway, fun question, Susan, and keep them coming, Patreon members. All right, let's take a quick break and then talk about a special rural economic system. Be right back. Today's episode of Growers Daily is brought to you by Peaceful Heritage Nursery. If you're looking for hardy and resilient fruit trees, berry plants, or pawpaw trees, then check out Peaceful Heritage Nursery. Peaceful Heritage Nursery LLC is a mail-order nursery shipping premium quality fruit trees and berry plants across the USA. They specialize in resilient, non-GMO plant genetics for small growers. Their diverse selection includes berries, cold-hardy figs, passion fruit, gumi, mulberry, and much more. They're famous for their diverse selection of premium quality grafted pawpaw trees. 5-star Google ratings and customer testimonials attest to their commitment to excellence in quality and service. Find them at peacefulheritage.com and join their mailing list. Once again, find them at peacefulheritage.com. Use the promo code NOTILL, all caps, one word, for 10% off your first order. All right, back to the show. Okay, so I wanted to talk a little about something I mentioned on Friday that I call country currency, but maybe other people have other names for it, or maybe people who engage with it aren't even fully aware of it. But basically, there is a very old, very subtle tradition in rural communities of helping each other out without really being asked. So one example of this would be our wonderful neighbors in our old farming community that we used to live in called Bug Tussle, Kentucky. These are old school farmers who were born and raised in that area and would stop by all the time and offer help or bring tools they knew we needed or things they thought we could use. At first, it was a little jarring to have someone being so nice to you all the time and so generous. But then we realized beyond some socializing, these visits and small gifts and favors were part of this really beautiful economy that doesn't exist everywhere. What this economy is an unconscious barter system or system of credit or system of currency where neighbors are always working to help each other out in a way that accrues goodwill. So for instance, if you never helped your neighbor out, it's hard to ask them for something when you really need it, and vice versa. It feels like you need to offer them something in exchange, like money, but that feels weird because it's a neighbor. And sometimes, especially in the country, neighbors don't have a lot of money. So in the country currency economy, debt and credit are the wrong words for their negative connotation, but it's sort of a debt of service or a credit that gets built up, where a good deed is exchanged for a future good deed. Historically speaking, credit has nothing to do with money. Credit is derivative of words that mean trust or belief. So in the country, instead of always exchanging money for things, we exchange favors and sometimes stuff. It's been like that on each of the farms that we've started where our neighbors sort of engaged in this economy, including the current one where we love our neighbors. Again, we watched a basketball game with them this weekend, and in this beautiful way, it becomes almost a game or competition where your neighbor may go out of their way to help you to pull your truck out of the mud or saw up a tree branch or that fell on your road before you get to it, or just bring you a tool you once mentioned needing. And then you try to do the same for them, lest they will have more goodwill on you than you have on them. Now, no one would ever say it out loud, but that is sort of how it functions. It's fun, but it also has a lot of utility. The net effect of this is that neighbors just sort of help other neighbors out, always trying to stay one deed ahead of them. Then, as the neighbors get older, they may come on a really busy day to come over and ask if you can help them load hay because they just can't do, sling the bales like they used to. And you help them because they have always helped you. Then that game you played, exchanging good deeds for years, suddenly becomes really important as that neighbor gets older and less capable. And anyway, I was thinking about this because I've been thinking about the reaction to me talking about money last week and just thinking about how you can't buy that level of a relationship. You can't buy that kind of relationship. In fact, if you ever try to pay for some help they give you, it's kind of an insult. The debt of goodwill is more important. And I love that. Again, you cannot buy that from someone. Cliche as it is, you cannot buy relationships. Did we pay those neighbors for stuff too? Yeah, absolutely. Hay and straw and maybe some specialized tractor work or whatever. But then they would generally try to buy stuff back from us, which part of this game is also avoiding getting that money back. Also, sure, not every neighbor engages, which is fine. But also, when you do something for them, they all sort of unconsciously know the rules and jump in themselves. Like, try to give a neighbor something, you will almost certainly get something back in this sort of country currency. Anyway, it's my favorite economy I've ever been a part of. It's a satisfying economy. It's an economy where you really can only accrue so much quote unquote debt. Unlike with cash, you can hoard it. As a society, we have for many generations worshipped those who have a lot of money, but have been left unable to recognize why wealthy people always need more. It's because money is inherently unsatisfying. There isn't an amount of money that will fulfill a person. What's that John D. Rockefeller line? When asked how much money is enough, they said something like just $1 more. Like, I don't enjoy eating food that never fills me up or satiates me. And that same thing should be said of our economy and our relationships. If it doesn't fill you up, then it doesn't have any nutrition. By contrast, you can get full and stay full on country currency. Now, obviously, you still need money. The world is designed around it. But I don't think it hurts to have a little country currency too, just in case. Anyway, I'm sure I have a lot more to say about money and how true wealth is not what you have, but what you give. But we will leave it there for now. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music and the team at Notill Growers. Shouts to Epidemic Sound for all the background music you always hear. Pick up a copy of the Living Soil Handbook from Farmer Jesse, that's me, or The Seed Farmer from Farmer Dan Brisebois, over at notillgrowers.com to support our work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/notillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or sign up in the month of January, you get a shout out on the show. So big shout outs today to Marcia. Marcia is a fun name. Marcia and Peter Broad. This is a couple farmers. They're hired, or they volunteer at a local nursing home to help the residents get, their sort of community gardens set up. And they realize, like, in so doing, that all of the residents have this sort of story about time travel. Like, they all talk about how they're time travelers. And at first it's like, they're a little older and maybe a little quirky, but then they start to realize, like, oh, everybody has kind of the same story. And there may be something to this. So this is, unraveling this mystery becomes quite an adventure in this particular story. And with Peter and Marcia. And we will call it, and it's called Time Will Tell. It's written by somebody like a dad with corny puns. Thank you for watching and or listening. We will see you tomorrow.